Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our grad certificate info session tonight about geographic information systems and the Geospatial Data Analytics program. My name's Megan. I'm one of your hosts tonight and wanted to start things off with a few acknowledgements and welcomes. NSCC is located in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded territory and traditional homeland of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Our relationship is based on a series of peace and friendship treaties between the Mi'kmaq Nation and the Crown dating back to 1725. As treaty beneficiaries, we recognize that we're all treaty people. Next, I have an African Nova Scotian recognition to share. NSCC recognizes the African Nova Scotians as a distinct group who arrived here 400 years ago. From that time on, they've contributed to the infrastructure and economic wealth of the towns and cities they've helped to build. Let us learn more about how our respective communities were shaped by the historical contributions of African Nova Scotians to Mi'kma'ki. So if you're watching this live right now and not later on as a recording on YouTube, you'll be able to send us questions that you have throughout the session this evening. So you on the GoToWebinar software will have a little chat box that looks like this. Feel free to type those questions in. And if we have time at the end, we'll go through and answer some of them. But you're always welcome to send questions to us in the recruitment department. Our email is recruitment@nscc.ca. My team and I filter those through, we respond to those questions, and I can always connect you with faculty that way as well. One other thing to note is if you are watching this as a recording, this has been filmed on March 26, 2026. And if you are watching this in the future, you might want to check back the program pages just in case there have been any updates that you wanted to note. All right, so I'm not doing this alone today. I have two faculty members from COGS, Dave McLean and Stephen Edwards, our faculty who will be joining me to talk about their programs, and I'm glad to have them here to share all of their insights. A few bits of information before I invite faculty on. When we're looking at these two programs in particular, you'll probably hear us talk about COGS, Center of Geographic Sciences. This is part of our Annapolis Valley campus. It's located in Lawrencetown, Nova Scotia. And when we're talking about the GIS program, Geographic Information Systems, the classes are going to be located in person. So you're heading into campus, or you could choose to take the program online. So you'd have the in-person option or the online option through our eCampus delivered through the COGS building. And for the Geospatial Data Analytics program, we're looking at an online option only. So you're certainly connected to Center of Geographic Sciences, but your classes would all be online, which would provide a lot of flexibility for you to be living outside of the area if you wanted to do so. One other thing to note is that international students, these programs are not eligible for a postgraduate work permit. You're certainly welcome to come and take the program, but it wouldn't be a pathway for a postgraduate work permit. Geographic Information Systems, a few more details here. The next start date as of now is September 2026. It's a one-year program. And as I mentioned, you can do full-time in-person classes or full-time online classes. And those classes tend to be synchronous, which means you're logging in at a set time and you're part of a live classroom experience. Admission requirements, these are ones to take note of because they're pretty wide and broad for this program. We need to see that you have some post-secondary experience, so either a diploma or an undergrad in a related field. We've got a full list of different options here. If you're wondering whether your education experience could qualify you, feel free to email us in recruitment and we can take a look for you. There's some other info listed here as well. Just talking a little bit about some of the skills that are important in the program in order for you to be successful. So coming in with existing computer skills, for example, will be really helpful for you. One other thing to consider is that when we're looking at the kind of other end of the student lifestyle, graduation and employment, that there are many employers in this industry who would be looking for a criminal record check as part of their hiring process. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If you did have personal questions about that, feel free to email us in recruitment and we can get some answers for you. All right, Dave, maybe this is a good time for you to hop on and talk a bit about what you'll learn in the program.
Sure. I'm Dave McLean, and I've been a faculty member here at COGS since 2001. Before that, I worked in industry in British Columbia in the Middle East, in New Brunswick, using and applying GIS technologies to large databases and helping groups and individuals and companies make better decisions based on geography. So in our program, you'll learn things like how to manage and manipulate, how to analyze data in a variety of formats and with a variety of GIS software. We'll also dig deeply into databases that enable that sort of stuff to work. There is ample opportunity for you to use GIS technology in your area of interest. You might have an ecology or a environmental science, geology type background, and there's lots of opportunity to bring that into play as part of assignments, projects, coursework, etc. We also deal with the complete range of geomatics type software, and there are remote sensing aspects to what we learn so that you get a certain amount of that. That includes things like image analysis and dealing with moving that data from remote sensing systems into a GIS database. We also do lots of customized applications through a variety of different programming languages and techniques, mainly Python, but also things like, Model Builder, data pipelines, safe softwares, FME, and a variety of other ways to help automate geoprocessing tasks. And that is key to working in industry, being able to automate geoprocessing tasks. And a lot of the information gets deployed in web mapping solutions. As I was working through some marking today, a number of students are getting ready to do a second section of a small project in the next couple of weeks. And almost every one of them had something to say that I want to do such and such towards more geoprocessing. I'm amazed at how much I've learned already, and I want to concentrate a little bit more effort on it. And it's really cool to hear those sorts of stories. So, next page, please. We have 3 semesters, and from September through December, you'll be taking these courses in Fundamentals of GIS, Fundamentals of Geospatial Data Analytics, Geodesy, GNSS, Geosensors, Spatial Data Management, Programming Fundamentals, and Fundamentals of Remote Sensing. Excuse me. And that semester is pretty much exactly the same as the one that's in GDA. You'll see in a few minutes, because we have the same entrance requirements for students. And we're taking you from whatever level you're at and bringing you up with these fundamentals so that you get a sense of each of these 6 topics. In the second semester, the one that's ongoing now, it goes from January till the end of April. Students take 2 mandatory courses. One of them is Advanced GIS, another one is Information Systems, which is databases. And then they have a chance to take 2, 3, or 4 electives. These are different lengths, they're different depths, so thus the number is dependent on which ones you pick. But they give you quite a variety of different sorts of things that you can deal with. You want to do more web programming. You want to know geoprocessing and modeling. You want to do stuff with LiDAR or more in the remote sensing side of things. No problem. There are electives for these sorts of things. One of them works with safe software's FME towards processing and moving data from one format to another. So there's quite a number of electives from which students can choose And we set those up. We talk about them in October so that you have a sense of which ones are going to be available for next year. And right now, students are going through the selection process for what they want to have for their capstone project topic. And these are things that could be done with a company sponsor, with an agency from government, with a small NGO. We'll see a couple of examples in the next couple of minutes. Or it could be something that's a topic idea of interest to you that we can work with from late April through late May. And that all caps off with presentations to the other students, the faculty, and any sponsors. Next slide, please. And here are a few example type projects. There's a URL in the middle of the page there that you can copy down and take a look at your convenience. But many of these projects are sponsored by, as I said earlier, not-for-profits or government or industry. And in the one in the upper left, for instance, shows lots and lots of water. That's one where one of the students did an assessment of the Sackville River flood from 2020, was that 22? I think. The one in the upper right refers to a project done with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans in Newfoundland for receiver arrays for Atlantic cod. The one that's obviously a fire is studying spatial patterns of wildfire severity in parts of California. And then there's one that's the floods of the Ottawa and Rideau rivers. In the lower right, there's one for alpine tree line analysis in the Alberta Rockies. And then at the very bottom, where we mentioned the UNESCO, Southwest Nova Biosphere, and us, we have a number of long-term ongoing projects. And in this case, there's one where the local biosphere reserve, part of UNESCO, has a fairly extensive data set that we work with, and we collate, we manage it for them. And it's an atlas of data across Nova Scotia with a lot of resources and links towards how to use that sort of a thing. And so some students have a chance to work through projects with that group. These are just a few samples from last year. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to see some examples of student work. When students are approaching the capstone project, are these themes that they are researching and choosing themselves, or are you pairing them with organizations to work with?
Both, or maybe I should say either. We have a list of 30 or 40 project ideas from governments and companies that we will list out for students. But many, and in fact, all five of the six of these are ones that students found on their own. And oftentimes students come in with an idea and they can use that. And sometimes during the year, they talk to their connections, their friends, their maybe their summer job from the year before, and put project ideas together as well. For this year, it looks like it's going to be about half-half who use projects suggested by industry and who come up with their own. Great question.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see the variety. I think sometimes when we're talking about Center of Geographic programs, where it's Center of Geographic Science programs, we're thinking a lot about making maps, of course, but it really goes beyond geographic formations, right? It's all about sort of social issues, environmental issues. There's so many different things that you're looking at data for and exploring in your program. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you want to talk a bit about career options and kind of where you see your students heading off to after they graduate?
Sure. We've been really lucky over the 35 or 40 years that we've been around as a program. And as it's changed, the types of interests and such have changed, but we've always had a good connection with industry, and grads, once they're through the 9-month program, are qualified to work as GIS specialists, analysts. Many of them become application programmers or developers. There are many who manage spatial databases and work often with groups that deal with data of interest to them, to the grads, that has a geographic bent to it. There are lots of employees who work for small companies, 6, 7, 8 employees in the company, and there are ones that work with companies that have 4,000, 5,000 employees, all sizes of government, right across the country. Many jump into academia, and we also have some that get into research. There are people who work for not-for-profits, and they are working as closely as the same town that we live in, Steve and I live in, to all the way around the world. We have the benefit also of being connected with Acadia and their Master of Science in Applied Geomatics, which is a 2-year program, and many of our programs act as the first of those 2 years. Steve might speak to it a little bit more, but effectively, most students who go into that would end up taking some sort of a project that they work on over the summer, and then go into the final year at Acadia. The third bullet down there is another URL that you can copy down if you'd like to give it a try later on. For the past 20 years, we've also created voluntary grad profile booklets. And in that, there are many resumes. Feel free, if you'd like to take a look at it, you'll see that they list out a half-page resume for the students who are involved. And these are picked up in paper form and also the digital form online by companies across the country and certainly across North America and to a degree around the world as well. And we often have companies get in touch with us and say, hey, could you have student X get in touch with me? I'm interested in hiring them, because the background is a match for the sort of thing that that group is doing.
That's great to hear that the connection with industry partners is so strong that you've got, folks reaching back to you for looking for grads. One question that's coming to mind for me right now is, the program being offered in person and also online. Are you seeing the same kind of online options with jobs in the field, or do you know if most students are working in person in an office?
Great question, and that's one that does get asked often. Industry tends to want to have junior people, work in offices for the simple reason of learning about them, getting them connected, being able to work as a team, as a group. And it's not 100%, but it's largely the case. And it's mainly due to that needing to catch on to the culture, needing to have the opportunity to talk to and work with other people about the nuances of what the job really means. Certainly, as you move through the career, there are lots of people who do work at home, and for companies that are 1 time zone, 4 time zones, 6 time zones away. And in their situations or their conditions, those tend to work out also very well. but you should expect that the first job, the first few years are going to be in an office most of the time.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, David, for sharing some program info. Stephen,
Sure.
Edward, I know you are here as well, ready to talk about geospatial data analytics. Maybe I'll run through some quick points here and then let you jump in to talk more about your program. So very similar to our last section, we're looking at this coming September as our next intake for geospatial data analytics. The program length is a year, and of course it's a graduate certificate program. Now this one is unique in that it is offered exclusively online. So you'd be doing full-time classes, they're synchronous, meaning most of the time you're logging into a live classroom. Admission requirements, as you can see, also broad. So lots of different experiences that can be looked at here when you're applying. Needs to be post-secondary, although there are, as you can see at the bottom, also some consideration given to those with relevant work experience as well. So feel free to reach out to us in recruitment if you're wondering whether your background is going to be a match for the admission requirements. If not, we can always suggest other NSCC programs that you could explore first to then move into one of these programs at COGS. And you can also see the similar note here that there are going to be some employers in the field who are looking for a criminal record check. So another thing to keep in mind as you're getting ready to apply. Stephen, I'll pass things over to you. Do you want to start off by sharing a bit about the program and what folks can expect to learn?
Sure. Thank you, Megan. Actually, I'm going to start like Dave did with an introduction, just so people know, again, who I am. So I am one of several faculty members that teaches in the Geospatial Data Analytics program. I guess you would say I'm kind of the main one, as it's the main area that I focus on and where I teach. But people like Dave McLean also instruct in this program as well. So there's a lot of crossover between GIS and GDA. In terms of me personally, my background is actually in archaeology. I came to GIS through my experience as an archaeologist doing survey work and managing the spatial data for many projects, among many other cool things, which I do try to weave into some of my teaching. But I bring that up specifically because we do have a really wide, diverse range of backgrounds that people come to GDA from. It's not just from earth and environmental sciences and geography. It really can be quite broad. So like Megan said, if you're looking at those list of admissions programs that are most suited and you're uncertain if you're a good fit, just ask us. We're happy to assess and give you some feedback on that. For those of you that do choose to pursue GDA, what you will learn is listed on screen. Now, this is a wall of text. I'm not going to read it, but I can summarize it very succinctly for you by saying that the GDA program is, in my words, a blending of the best of GIS and the best of data analytics together in one single program, which is very challenging to do. It's extremely condensed. It's a lot of hard work, but that is what you're going to get exposed to. The bullet points on the bottom of the screen here show you some of the kinds of specific things you will learn to do and build while you're a student here. And the one thing I'll highlight is you see in parentheses in a couple of these, the third last in the bottom one there, AI, right? It's the term everybody hears all over the place these days. This is absolutely one of the focuses of our program. We're trying to weave in as much artificial intelligence and what we call Geo AI into our training. That's an area of my particular interest and focus. So we're doing machine learning, we're doing traditional data analytics, we're building dashboards, we're trying to predict things, we're trying to solve all kinds of problems, leveraging frontier models and cutting edge technologies that are available to the geospatial world. There's a lot of heavy integration with Esri Canada tools. So this is one of the major GIS providers across the world, especially in Canada. But we also work with a lot of open source libraries and tools as well. And so you kind of get a real full spectrum look in at the technologies that are available today and how to use those to solve specifically geospatial problems, which is really hard, but which also means there's a lot of opportunity there. So you're going to learn a lot.
Sounds good. We've got an overview of courses here. We'll talk a little bit about some highlights for folks to expect.
Yeah, of course, and there's a lot of overlap right here. As Dave noted, there is a common shared first term, the fall term, called semester one on the slide, where you see there's a lot of courses called fundamentals of ... So the GIS program, the GDA program, and our remote sensing students often take essentially the same suite of courses in the fall in which all the key faculty members teach one or more of these courses. The one I'm mostly familiar with is the one that I teach every year, which is called Fundamentals of Geospatial Data Analytics, which is exactly that. It's sort of an introduction to the field of data analysis from the point of view of geographic data or geospatial data. The real strong GDA focus comes into effect in the second term of the semester 2 courses listed here, where these are specifically GDA courses. You can see their titles here. Doesn't really tell you a whole lot about what's actually taught in these courses, but I can tell you in a brief kind of overview that the 2 data mining courses you see here, you see data mining, you might as well just read machine learning. Here is how you're going to learn to build custom models from scratch, models using deep learning algorithms and leverage modern day technologies, GPUs and stuff to train large models to make predictions on things like image data, but also vectorized data. So basically data frames that are geospatial in nature, all the kind of stuff that you're going to hear about in the news over the next couple of years. Below that, you can see we have location analytics. So this is kind of like a location intelligence course where we try to answer questions about things like where's the optimal location for X, Y, or Z. That could be for a business, it could be for nature preserve, it doesn't really matter. The idea is that we can use geospatial data to analyze, optimize, and choose the best places for whatever it may be. Image analytics, you know what you're going to be doing there. The world has lots of satellites floating around outside in low orbit right now and high Earth orbit. They're taking pictures constantly of our surface, and somebody needs to analyze those. And that's what we try to emphasize. Leveraging things like algorithmic approaches to image analysis is like woven into almost every student project we have at COGS these days. So something that's fundamental across a lot of different programs, but you get a dedicated course to that in GDA. Likewise, spatial analysis and geostatistics. A lot of people come to our school from the mining industry where geostats kind of dominates a lot of mineral prospection, but also it's quite useful set of tools for a lot of other applications. And so you'll get a dedicated course to that as well. Now, the last course in semester 2 that's listed there is called Major Analytics Project. This is a special course. It actually ties in with your semester 3, which is your spring term, where in the GIS program, you would typically complete a capstone project. In the GDA program, you don't complete a capstone project, you complete what we call a major analytics project. And this stretches across the January through end of May terms. So really the winter and spring terms. So 15 weeks, January to mid-April, and then again, 5 weeks after that. So it's a major undertaking. The closest equivalent I can kind of think of is a thesis. So it's kind of like a graduate level thesis. It can be conducted in conjunction with an external industry partner or government institute or research group, whatever it may be, or it can be totally self-driven. It doesn't really matter. I work with students to kind of scope these projects and to kind of outline them for you. And we do that very early on in the fall term, and it really comes to fruition so that you hit the ground running in January and you're really kind of fleshing out a very major project, hence the name Major Analytics Project. So that third semester there, you see it says Analytics Project Delivery and Reporting. It's really a continuation of that project work. So it's a big undertaking, but it's a great portfolio thing to keep with you when you graduate from COGS in June.
I've just got a quick question about the semester breakdown. I'm thinking of folks who are watching this and maybe trying to decide which one of the 2 programs feel like the one that they would like to take. And with both of the first semester programs being, so similar with so much overlap, do you ever have students who after semester 1 decide to kind of switch into the opposite program?
Yes, we have had that before. It's not uncommon. There are pathways for that. Though all of those changes do require approval at a stage slightly above my ability to give complete, definitive answers to. But that has happened in the past. It's not uncommon.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. The next slide, talking a little bit more about that analytics project that you were mentioning, that really
Right.
big culmination of learning.
Fair enough. So some of these are obviously very much out of context. These are all images that are representative of some of the work that geospatial data analytics students have produced in our program. Some of these are directly from major analytics projects. Others are from assignments that they've completed in some of the other courses. So I don't have a pointer, but the one that you can see in kind of the middle top half of the page, this is an example of a suitability output. So students will, in the location analytics course, learn how to gather wide ranges of data in order to determine the optimal locations for a business or a service or something like that. This one happens to be for locating possible potential timber resources in the middle of Saskatchewan, essentially. So just a slight output to kind of trigger that discussion. So a typical assignment that we have students complete. On the right-hand side, that kind of gradient colored bar chart you see there is actually an example of an output where we are having students compare different models, machine learning algorithms, to learn which algorithms and which architectures for machine learning systems are optimal for producing the most accurate outputs. And that's something we like to do. So we do a lot of programming. We work primarily in Python. We also use the programming language R. But I'll tell you that right off the bat, you do not need to have any prior knowledge in programming in order to excel at these. We start from the ground up, and you quickly develop your skills to get to the point where you can do some of this stuff, like building complex models from scratch. A few of the other images shown here at the bottom, on the bottom far right, you see that kind of circular pinwheel looking thing. That's an example of visibility analysis. It's doing something called conical visibility analysis to assess how much you can see from a given point in the landscape. And this kind of work is something I do in my research in archaeology, where I study ancient watchtower systems and defensive strategies and surveillance in the past. And I also do lots of things in my research that are representative of the middle bottom image, which are least cost pathway analysis, trying to find the optimal route between locations. I use it for modeling ancient road systems, but in this particular case, this is an example from a student project that was done in order to plot optimal routing of underwater oil pipes in the Gulf of Mexico for a GIS company that was based in Houston. So some very applied type work that actually borrows from the same methodologies that I used studying ancient societies from the Middle East from 5,000 years ago. So that's kind of cool. And then the bottom left, these are scatter plots, and I forget where they actually come from specifically, but I grabbed them and I think they're from a student project. Again, doing some kind of machine learning, looking at demographic data. I think this is from Quebec City and looking at restaurant apprenticeship programs in Quebec City. But the reason I'm bringing that out here is to show you that it's not just maps, it's all kinds of data visualizations that we have to consider when crafting a data story. And so you'll learn about all the different types of visualizations in addition to mapping that are useful for that purpose in our program. Right, okay, and then career options. You're gonna find some solid overlap here again with Dave and his discussion earlier. The most common route, again, this is just kind of anecdotal evidence at this point, but most of our students that graduate from GDA do end up pursuing GIS analyst positions or GIS developer positions. They leverage that geospatial education to get into the market. That being said, they are still eligible and a good fit for just pure data analyst jobs. And we do have a few students that have pursued that route as well. I've had students, many of them now, pursue further education beyond COGS, so doing master's degrees and PhDs as well. And we've also had a few join smaller companies and startups as well, doing a wide range of tasks. Some of it very GDA specific, some of it more GIS, more remote sensing, it just depends. But you end up graduating from COGS with a broad range of skills, and that means you have a broad range of options to choose from when it comes to careers. And the bottom paragraph there is the same as what you saw in Dave's career options page. The GDA program is a very good pathway into our master's program that we run jointly with Acadia University. I'm the coordinator of that program. And so for students that are interested in this option, early on in the fall term, I host kind of like this, like a webinar, in which I discuss the specifics of the Acadia Masters. It is technically a fully independent one-year master's, but the caveat for that is you have to complete a one-year graduate certificate at COGS in order to be eligible for admissions in that program. So it is jointly connected because of that relationship. And there are a few other nuances that people should know. So those of you who are at least interested in that program, maybe you've seen it on the Acadia website or you're just learning about it now and it's piquing your interest, keep it in mind, send me an email and ask me a question if you're interested in learning more, or in the Q&A period after this talk, we can also briefly touch on it. I'm happy to share more information on that as needed. So I think that's it for me, Megan. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Stephen. I'm going to talk a bit more about some finance stuff, some program specifics, and then I will call you back on because I can see that we have some questions coming in from folks who are watching live. But before we get to those questions, just some financial info here. All of our program fees are laid out on the website. We have the URL at the bottom of the screen there. But for both programs, these costs are the same when we're talking about tuition and college fees. So you can see we have a domestic student amount, an international student amount. There's the general flat tuition rate and then additional fees on top of it. So for domestic students, you're typically looking at around $6,159. One other thing to note is that our Tuition rates for the upcoming year, so September 2026, will be announced a little later this spring. So if there are any changes, we'll update that on our program fees webpage. Now, both programs have some additional costs. These aren't costs that are paid to NSCC by the student. These are simply costs that we ask that you budget for, because they can vary a little bit, just depending on the individual. So you can see here we have some costs to buy supplies for you to use in the classroom, attend different kinds of conferences or events or workshops. If you're an online student, you'll need to get a second monitor, the cost of computer, etc. So we have all of these itemized for you too. And also, if you're curious about, what a performance range computer and accessories means exactly, our program fees page does have a link to more information about the type of computer equipment that we'd recommend that you get. And then similarly for geospatial data analytics, you can see we have some different costs for technology and also supplies. So this is handy if you are doing your own personal budgeting, or if you're applying for a student loan, for awards at NSCC, then these are costs that you'll want to be aware of. And speaking of awards, we have over $6 million in awards that are given to students every year. And so this is something that I would really recommend everyone look into. Most of our awards you'd be able to apply for after you've confirmed a program seat. So if you say are interested in what you're seeing, you apply very soon, you might be able to catch our spring awards season before it closes. So you'd apply for those awards usually after you have confirmed your program seat, and then you'd be able to apply again every fall and every spring right up until graduation. If you're interested in applying, you can do that online. Our application fee is $40 for domestic applicants. You would do the online application. We've got apply now buttons all over the website. You would have your transcript sent in from your last post-secondary, so we can see that you meet our requirements. And then we'd review your app. Once you're accepted, you'd pay a $200 tuition deposit, and then we'd be in touch with more information about your classes beginning this September. We don't actually have an application deadline for domestic students, so you're welcome to apply really any time throughout the year. However, because we look at applications in the order that they're completed, it's always beneficial to apply sooner than later. If a program fills up, we'd be able to put you on a wait list. So always good to apply really as soon as you're ready to do so. So I can see we have questions coming in the chat. Dave and Stephen, I know you are ready to give answers to these. Let me open these up and read some of them aloud, because it's great to see so much interest from people who are watching. First one that I'll toss out to both of you is just maybe in a nutshell, if someone is trying to decide between the GIS program and the GDA program, are there any particular maybe traits or interests that you'd say would make more sense for one or the other?
I was just going to say take my program, but that's not fair, is it? So, oh, Dave, I think you might be muted.
I'm going to say take his program.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, take Dave's program. So,
take his program.
We'll go in circles all day. Honestly, I know it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but you can't really go wrong in either program. And the skill sets overlap quite profoundly, such that it's really difficult to say that one person might be better suited for one than the other. If I could be forced to make that decision, say if you have a particular background in data analytics, you might be a little bit more inclined to spending the kind of time that we do looking at data from that angle compared to GIS. But that being said, you do a lot of data analysis in GIS too.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah.
Great question, and thanks for asking.
This one really is more for you, David, talking about the in-person versus online options for your program. Is there any difference in that experience for students? I mean, it's the same curriculum, right? Are you seeing anything that you'd want to kind of point out for folks who are maybe deciding between online or in-person?
Sure. Yeah, it's exactly the same curriculum. The same sort of stuff is taught in each. Most of the courses would be either the online cohort or the in-person cohort. But in second term, we do have a few courses that are hybrid, and those are working fine. We have students in class and online via Teams at the same time, everybody participates towards generating questions and such, and it works. Speaking completely and honestly, yes, the in-person environment is better now, because you have that opportunity to be in a place, everybody else in the building is talking about other geo things. You're completely immersed in the environment, but it's not a, if you need to stay home, if you need to stay somewhere other than Lawrencetown, Nova Scotia, for lots of reasons, it is a really good opportunity. Both of the program works. There are many students who've been going through the online structure and move into roles just at the same kind of level as people in person. So it really comes down to what is absolutely right for each of you. Last year, for instance, the majority of our in-person students were from different provinces or different countries right across the country. Whereas many of the people that are in the in-person are in Nova Scotia somewhere, but they're there for a variety of different reasons. This year, I guess it's probably about half-half, the in-person. Half are from other provinces, half of them are from Nova Scotia. Hope that begins to answer it a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. It looks like they were also curious about it from an employment perspective. So great to hear you mentioning that folks from both streams are heading into the same kinds of opportunities after graduation.
Yep.
Here's a question for both of you. Do you find, is it possible for students to work part-time since they're studying full-time?
Yes, I'm going to say yes.
Okay, I think we can answer this one openly and honestly. We know that students will continue to work part-time occasionally during these programs. We have to be honest, the workload is intense in both of these programs. They're full-time programs. Students on campus, because we can monitor them, we've seen them through the years, are frequently there, sometimes until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and on weekends finishing projects and working overtime, because it's a really intensive program. If people have the capacity to work during that time as well and make money, we encourage that if they can do it, but it's not typically a great combination to maximize your performance as a student.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it will be different for everybody, certainly what they're willing to juggle, but we have a few questions kind of along that line about what the schedule look like. And I know schedules haven't officially been released for this coming fall, but can you both give us a bit of an idea about what the time commitment is during the day, and then maybe a bit outside of that?
Sure. Weekly, you'd have 26 hours of class, Monday through Friday. The classes will be scheduled and you'll be allocated to them. You don't need to worry about signing up for classes. And as Steve said, typically people work most evenings, maybe 3 out of the 4 evenings, as well as maybe one of the weekend days towards getting their material done. So there is certainly some time, but it's generally in that kind of order of magnitude for the first term. Second term, you have fewer classes, but they tend to be longer. They're more in depth. And depending on the time of the term, there might be a little bit more leeway, or you might be just as busy as you were in first term.
And in case it's not obvious, the classes are scheduled during what you might call normal business hours. They're typically offered between 8:30 and 4:30, depending on the day, depending on the class. For the most part, that's.
And it's true then for both of the online options that we're talking about. These classes are usually synchronous, so folks are needing to sign in to be a part of them live, right? They wouldn't be able to, say, catch a recording later, or how do you structure it?
There are instances where that can be arranged, but it's not the policy, and it's not normal for all classes to be recorded unless there's an agreement beforehand. So that's, you know, if a student has to miss a class because of a funeral or another obligation, you know, something that's obviously out of their control, as faculty, we always try to make accommodations for that whenever we can. But the programs are synchronous online, which means that there are scheduled classes. Faculty are in class doing stuff live, and students are expected to be there during those class times.
Sounds good. A question has just come in, and this might feel a little outside of your range, I'm not sure, but I know that, you know, COGS is a small community, so maybe this could be something I can toss to both of you. So someone who's also looking at the cartography and geovisualization program, and kind of wondering about that program versus the two that we're talking about tonight. Are there any kind of main differences that come up on the top of your heads?
How artistic are you?
Okay, so that's a big component of that one, I'd imagine.
In all three, you're going to get a lot of the same material, just to different depths. And in the cartography one, geovisualization, you're going to get a lot of how to present data to get information across to people very well. It's a well-known, long-standing program, and there are many award-winning posters and works being done by those students. They also make great career paths. But largely, I'll come back to that. How artistic are you? Because you need to be able to portray things. And I can't do that.
So it sounds like that kind of graphic design skill is going to be emphasized if you're heading into cartography.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, wonderful, thank you. We also have a question about the master's program, that partnership with Acadia. And someone's curious about if it's possible to do that program remotely, or is it an in-person program?
The master's program at Acadia is in person, though its on-campus commitments or requirements are a little bit more flexible, just based on the amount of classes that you take and how they're scheduled. So I can give you an example that's sort of currently our cohort of students typically has on-campus obligations once to twice a week, depending on course selection. So if you're someone and you're living in, say, Halifax, it is driving distance to Halifax. You could work part-time and still be able to complete that program, hypothetically, if that was a concern. But that being said, it is an in-person program. So you have to be able to be on campus on a regular basis, a weekly basis. It's just not quite as intensive as COGS with 26 hours of scheduled class. Is that what it is, Dave? 26 hours of scheduled class? That's a lot of in-person time. So it's a little bit different, but it's not possible to complete it remotely.
All right, and a question for both of you. What's the average class size in your classrooms?
Some of my classes are 7 or 8 people this year. Most of them are high teens, and one of them is 23, another one is 30.
And GDA is ranging between 10 to 20, depending on the year.
Nice, small classes, so everyone gets to know each other pretty well.
Indeed.
That's great. All right, looks like we have time maybe for one more question. We've just had someone write in who's curious about, wanting to brush up on some of the foundational skills, so things like Python, machine learning, etc. Are there any sort of resources that maybe you'd recommend for folks who wanted to get a bit of a head start in familiarizing them with those concepts and softwares before heading into the GDA program?
Sure. I think my go-to resource for Python, if you really like going back to the fundamentals, there's a great book called Automate the Boring Stuff, which I quite enjoy. And in terms of the machine learning material, there are some free to access courses. You can take them for certifications through Coursera, but you can get full access to the lecture material and all of the resources for what's called the what's it called? Deep learning? I can't remember the name of it. I think it's called deeplearning.ai. If you Google that, you'll find it on Coursera. They have some really excellent material that I've gone back to myself occasionally to look at things like fundamentals. I'm a little bit leery though to recommend purchasing books in this field right now, just because it's changing so fast that a textbook or some kind of material you go to brush up on now might honestly be out of date within a year. And I'm just going to be open and honest and say some very targeted YouTube channels I could recommend to you. If you email me, I'll send you a list that I subscribe to and I watch them all the time. Some of these people are literally at the very forefront of the field and they run excellent channels giving you stuff from the basics to advanced. So there's a ton of resources out there, some of them good, some of them not so good. You have to have your filter up. But that being said, don't overdo it. If you're going to enroll in the GDA or GIS program the summer before you start, do everything you can to be away from a computer screen and to not be doing academic work or training, because you'll get more than enough once you get here. Your eyes, your back, and your soul will thank you, I promise.
Good tips, thank you. We should wrap things up for the evening, but I really appreciate, Dave and Stephen, you sharing all of your knowledge and experience with us today. And we had so many great questions. We didn't even get to them all, which is wonderful to see. There's so much interest in these programs. If you have a question that we didn't answer, or maybe something else comes up for you later, email recruitment@nscc.ca. I'm also happy to connect you with Dave and Stephen today. So if you wanted that list of YouTube channels, etc., email us and we'll make sure that that request is directed to the right person. So thank you, everyone. We'll sign off, but really appreciate all the information shared today.
Thank you, everyone.
And your folks, appreciate it. All the best in your futures.
Thanks, guys. It was a great presentation.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.